Have you ever just stopped and wondered what makes you, well, you? Today, we're going to dive into the very tools psychologists use to map out the human mind. We're going beyond just who we are, and we're going to start to really unpack why we are the way we are. And you'll see key terms in both English and Arabic as we go, which is a great way to build up your vocabulary. So let's get right into it.
It really all boils down to this one massive question. How do we take a number, a score on some test, and turn that into a real three-dimensional understanding of a person? It's a huge leap, right? Well, today, we're going to see exactly how it's done. We're going to tackle this in three parts. First up, we'll open up the psychologist's toolkit. Then, we'll use those very tools to decode what makes an individual tick. And finally, we'll see how all these concepts come together to help us understand mental health.
All right, let's start with the tools of the trade. To really understand someone, you first have to have a way to gather information, and you've got to do it objectively. This is the psychologist's measurement toolkit.
Okay, first up is measurement. Think of this as the numbers game. It's all about taking something abstract, like, say, anxiety, and giving it a concrete score, maybe a 7 out of 10 on a questionnaire. It literally turns a feeling into a piece of data. But here's the thing, numbers almost never tell the whole story. And that's exactly where evaluation comes in. As you can see, it's a much broader process. It takes that 7 out of 10 for anxiety and weaves it into a bigger picture, adding context, observations, and professional judgment. So here's the difference in a nutshell. Measurement gives you the hard data. You got a 92 on the math test. It's objective. Evaluation, on the other hand, looks at the why. It considers your test score, absolutely, but it also looks at your class participation, the effort you put into homework, your whole attitude. One gives you a number, the other tells you the story behind it.
A proper evaluation isn't just random. It follows a really clear path. You figure out what you're looking for, you pick the right tools, you make sure they're actually good quality and practical to use, and only then do you start interpreting the data and applying what you've learned. It's a structured, thoughtful process from the beginning to the end.
So, we've got our toolkit for gathering all this information. Now, let's turn that lens inward. What are these tools actually measuring? Let's start decoding the core components that make an individual who they are. The classic debate, nature versus nurture. But as this chart shows, it's not really an either-or kind of situation. Our genetics, our heredity, they provide the initial blueprint. But it's our environment, our upbringing, our culture, our experiences, that's what shapes and builds on top of that blueprint. Now this highlights a really key distinction, ability versus skill. Think of your ability as your natural hardware. It's what you're born with. Skill, though, that's the software you install through practice and learning. So you might have a natural ability for rhythm, but you have to acquire the skill of playing the drums. Makes sense, right?
To map out a personality, psychologists often use these big 5 traits, and it's helpful to think of each one as a spectrum. For instance, are you organized and disciplined? That's high conscientiousness. Are you outgoing and energetic or more reserved? That's extroversion versus introversion. How curious and imaginative are you? That's openness. Calm and secure? Emotional stability. And are you cooperative and trusting? That's agreeableness. Your unique mix on these 5 sliders helps create your personal personality profile.
This brings us to a really mind-bending idea. Perception, it isn't just passive seeing or hearing. No way. It is an active process. Our brain takes in all this sensory information and then actively tries to match it against our entire library of past experiences and memories. This is exactly why 2 people can witness the exact same event and have completely different stories about it. We are all building our own reality moment by moment. Okay, in our final section, we're going to look at how these tools and concepts get applied to understand mental health challenges. We're moving into the realm of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that can cause serious distress or really get in the way of daily life.
So where's the line between just a personality quirk and a clinical disorder? Well, psychologists look for something called a harmful dysfunction. And that means the behavior isn't just atypical or different or even just disturbing. It also has to be maladaptive, which means it's actively interfering with your ability to function, to work, study, or have relationships. And finally, it's unjustifiable, meaning there isn't a clear, logical reason for it.
Anxiety isn't just one thing. It wears a lot of different faces.
For example, someone with generalized anxiety disorder might feel this constant, low-level worry about pretty much everything, while someone with a phobia has an intense, irrational fear of one specific thing, like spiders or heights. As you can see from the table, the core feature of each disorder is quite different. Now, personality disorders are a different category altogether. These aren't temporary states, they are long-term, really inflexible patterns of behavior. For instance, someone with avoidant personality disorder might be so sensitive to criticism that they avoid social situations entirely. On the other hand, someone with narcissistic personality disorder might have this inflated sense of self-importance and a real lack of empathy for other people. These are deeply ingrained patterns that really affect how a person relates to the world.
Now, schizophrenia is a particularly complex and, honestly, an often misunderstood disorder. Its literal translation means split mind, but, and this is a really crucial point, it does not mean split personality. It actually refers to a split from reality. It's characterized by disorganized thinking, disturbed perceptions like hallucinations, and sometimes inappropriate emotional responses.
And this brings us to a crucial final point. People, we aren't static. The forces that shape us, biological, psychological, social, they are always changing. And that's exactly why applying a permanent label to someone could be so limiting, even harmful. We are all works in progress.
So we end with this thought. We've explored the toolkits, the blueprints, and the diagnostic frameworks, and they give us an absolutely essential language for understanding the human mind. But they are just maps, they are not the territory itself. So the final question I want to leave you with is this. What essential part of a person's story might we miss if we only ever look at the label?